Today's guest, it's a visual Nuyorican artist whose journey I had the joy of witness up close. We met in France during our artist in residency, where we literally were studio neighbors, sharing the spacey process and that quiet magic that happens when artists create side by side. Since then, her work has been traveling from France to exhibitions across the US, including Scoop Miami and the other fair in Brooklyn, where she lives. I'm so excited to welcome Erica Morales. Welcome to the show, Erica.
Hello, Drica. So good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. You are my official first interview of 2020. I'm really, really excited to have you. Let's start up talking about Nuyorican because it's a new word for me, maybe not for where you are from. So you were born and raised in New York, but your first generations were Puerto Ricos, correct?
Yeah. So my family's originally from Puerto Rico and we migrated here, I guess in the 50s. And growing up, I heard the term a lot, Nuyorican. And especially when you move to like other parts of the US, my dad, he would introduce himself as Edwin Morales, the Nuyorican. And so people don't always connect it, but basically it means like you have, Puerto Rican descent. You were either raised in some part of New York City, whether it's the Bronx, Brooklyn. My family was brought up in the Bronx. And so that Nuyorican and Puerto Rican culture, like that New York flavor meets the Puerto Rican island. So that's really a Nuyorican.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for introducing me to that new word. Tell me a little bit about yourself and when and the time when you figure out that art was your calling, or at least one of them.
Very early on, I would say in my childhood, my art was, I guess, nurtured. I guess, I had teachers who provided materials for me to take home. Though it was foreign to my family because I didn't grow up with like other artists. I mean, we had musicians and singers, but really when it came to like visual arts, it was something a little foreign. And so, my family's always been supportive, but it really was early on. I would say, like, even, I mean, I have a vivid memory of like my third grade teacher putting me to do the backdrop of like a play, right? And so, though at the time, right, it didn't connect with sort of like my passion or it connecting to like, this is the love, this is my love. I think that definitely happened over time. But throughout, I would say my education, there was always an educator pushing this. And throughout my life, like through different challenges, family stuff, and just, what was happening in the world, it was became like my therapy. It became my safe place to create and explore. And as I got older and, when I went to college and, um, I went to school, my undergraduate I studied painting and drawing at School of Visual Arts, SVA in New York. And though I didn't, I always did art throughout my adulthood, but it really, I would say the last probably 5 to 7 years that I really made space for it, but also financially, right? Because art, it is costly. And so to be in a place to give back to myself and my art. And I feel like that's sort of the journey of where I'm at now to know like this is who I am. Like it was always a part of my identity. I feel like a lot of my childhood friends they know me as like, doing the little bubble letters or the sketches or whatever. But really the past, 5 to 7 years of my life is really when I was like, no, I need to put this in the forefront and making time and space for it.
Yeah, I believe this is so important, especially if you carry that identity. I talk a lot about identity because the way you see yourself, it's actually going to define everything that you create into this world. So thank you so much for sharing. I remember that we share studios. We are neighbors back in France a few years ago, and you had such a beautiful process in creating your artwork I noticed that your background is all of your artwork and they're so beautiful. And I would love for you to share your art process, the from the beginning to end.
So I feel like it's been like now I feel like I have like I created my process, right? I think in the past, again, as you're going through this journey as an artist,
Probably starts as an experimentation.
exactly. And you don't really fully get it together. But now my process is usually I sketch the piece probably either on like vellum or mylar paper, almost like color coding it. So usually I'll play with a certain colors that I'm vibing with, and I kind of color coded almost like a coloring book, but through drawing. And so, for example, say the face, the legs, maybe I'll draw those in purple, and then your outfit I'll draw in pink. So I'm kind of already mapping out the different colors that will hopefully continue to the final piece. And then from there, I work with stencil film, so I'm able to trace the drawing and really kind of separate some of the shapes from the piece. So for example, because it can seem a lot of it can be a little complicated like saying it out loud. So say I might have 6 or 7 layers of stencils to create one piece.
Kind of build up through layers to create the final element.
Exactly, exactly. So, and because I reproduce the same image characters, usually I try to reproduce the same image 2 or 3 times because it allows me to explore each of them and they all become different pieces. So, different from like limited edition prints, I'm really able to, for example, the background piece that you see, maybe there's watercolor in the garments. Maybe the next piece that I do, maybe there's a solid. Maybe I'm blending the background with the foreground, or I'm adding a little bit more detail to the hair or the face, or I'm drawing in certain parts of it or taking away. So it really allows me and really, for me, I feel like it's the piece that tells me what to do. It's almost like a dance. I feel like when I'm
That's the flow.
that's the flow. That's the flow. It's the dance of reaction, putting down something and then being like, oh, hold on, this. And then it's just like a spirit that just sort of takes you.
Yeah. I feel like it's so beautiful because there's so many ways that we can explain that flow states, but I believe that's exactly how you say it right now. This feedback loop that you keep getting it to that will lead you to the next step without any resistance.
And that's the challenging part.
That is so challenged. That's what I want to say because our rational mind tends to always be in the middle. But that's the beauty of the flow states because in flow, your rational mind, it's out. That's why you feel like you're receiving those nudges and those feedbacks. It feels like almost you receiving from from the divine, pretty much.
and,
You're
and it's,
just a conduit.
yeah. And it's trusting it. It's allowing it to funnel through you so you can be able to create whatever the final product is. But for me, the process is the most rewarding part because it's the unknown. It's reacting, you're sort of flowing with it. So for me, that's the most spiritual part of the process. Like from drawing to like that in between and then seeing what comes of it.
To the mass middle. I always get uncomfortable with the mass middle, but it's part of the process as well. I
Yeah.
love it so much. How would you define your art style?
I would say it's like abstract portraiture because my work does focus on portraits, figures. I am inspired by my own family, their stories, and the people in my life, my community. And so for me, because I use elements of hip hop culture, and that's where the spray paint comes in, as well as living in Miami, New York, and San Francisco, sort of taking from all those different cultures in the sense of the vibes, the color, the spirit. of what's happening. So yeah, so I would say like abstract contemporary portraiture.
Love for you to go back a little bit. What were the steps that or decisions that you had to take for the becoming of your art? How has evolved throughout those years?
Ooh, I would say definitely my confidence has evolved from early on. Like I've always been blessed and I've always been thankful that I've had community to see me even before I've seen myself, right? And so, your cheerleaders that are like, no, no, you got to make art, you got to make art. And then you still not making time for art. But people believing in the work. And so I think that for me to become who I am now, not only giving space to it, giving time, but also putting myself out there in the sense of applying to artist residencies so that then I can have the space to expand and explore, but also to be in conversation with other artists and be inspired by other works and other processes as well. And really like not holding myself, not pigeonhole or not holding myself into one particular niche. Like for me, I've always enjoyed collage. I've never considered myself a painter. Like I never thought I was a good painter in college, but I like that sort of messiness. I love drawing. And so for me, it was trying to figure out how do I incorporate all these things that I love into a piece for it to be in conversation with each other. And I feel like because I've uh, invested in having residencies or invested in renting out a studio, invested in being like, well, I want to take this class. I just want to take it just to switch things up. I feel like all those were things that I had to do to get where I'm at now. And also I think just age, right? Over time, it's just sort of like, okay, this is not like, I need to do this for me, right? You're doing it for yourself. Like, yes, it's a blessing when other people's receive it, and they get to enjoy it as well. But at the end of the day, you have to do it for you and trust. And I think like because of that, it's led me to where I'm at now.
I love that you mentioned about confidence. And I think confidence goes, especially on today's world that we live in with social media. You have to have that confidence to be able for your art to be seen. So it's really connected to visibility. And what I see in artists sometimes or most of the times they do love to paint. They are very proud of what they created, but they still hold it on to the way that they allow their art to be seen. They feel like if you're trying to make a sale, you're annoying people. And I always say the number one rule is your art is meant to be seen and it's safe to be seen. When you share something or your final product or your process like what you were doing it just now, it's almost a favor to the people who might be interested, and also your art to be able to really exist, not just inside the studio. So thank you so much for sharing. Since we are talking about that and your work has been moving through major art fairs such as Scoop Miami and the other fair in Brooklyn, I would love for you to share this experience. What has visibility taught you during this process?
I think it almost connects to what we were just talking about when it comes to social media. I think the pressure that we put on ourselves as artists, right? We have this idea of or this script that we think it's one way or the other. Art is subjective, right? Not everyone is going to connect with or understand, and I think that that's okay, right? And I think that with showing my work at Scope or the Brooklyn the art fair, it allowed me to see and connect with people who connect and appreciate the work because they can see themselves or their community, right? They can see a reflection or a spirit of someone that they know. And I think that, and you're an artist and you sell your work too, right? So when you have a collector who appreciates your work, right? That's priceless. Sometimes we can say, oh, you hear artists, oh, my work goes for whatever, whatever. And sometimes it's not necessarily about the price. We can never get back. We know the hours that go to each piece. But I think also the exposure that it gives you to other collectors, other artists, right? Being able to just on a human level to connect with people and for your art to um yeah, transform a space. So,
I think that's one of the most rewarding part of my work
mhm,
and sharing my work and doing what I do is see the eyes of the art collector when they connect it.
yeah,
Sometimes they will take some time to really connect it, or they will doubt their own tastes a little bit. And even if it's unconscious, okay? But when they see the work, it's almost like they're seeing part of themselves in your work. Or maybe it is something that they remember or someone that remind of them, and it's just this connection that goes so much deeper than just a sales transaction. And I love that we're talking about this because that's what artists need to understand. It's not just a transaction, it's an exchange of energy between the artist's consciousness and the collector's consciousness, and your art got to live with them for the rest of their life. This is so beautiful. It made me want to cry
yeah.
because it's the best part of what I do.
No, no, it's true. It's true. And I mean, you said it. I think you hit it right. They're living with this piece of art, so it is a living thing. You know what I mean? Like at
It
the
is.
like they're making a decision to commit to this piece. And collectors, and there's different types of collectors, right? There's those who they're drawn to something, they're collect. There's those who are like, oh, this is an up and coming artist, or oh, I want to, okay, I'm gonna collect it, and they might not always put it up on their walls, right? But if they are putting it up on their walls, whether it's in a corporate environment, a hotel, somebody's home, they're living with that 24 hours a day. So you have to connect with it in some way to be able for it to live in your space.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Thank you so much for sharing. And I was thinking as you're saying that you're not selling an art piece, you're selling a state of mind, because they either going to buy because they felt something right away and they want to feel, they want to have that feeling, or
Yeah.
even if it's just they're curious about you or they connected with your background. And it's almost like every time that they look, they are connecting to that first feeling that they had it when they first made a decision to invest it.
Yeah.
So I love talking about this. So we're talking about flow states. You seem very familiar with it. Can you explain if you have any type of rituals that can lead up to the flow states in your art practice?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always play music. I feel like music is a part of the ritual, and depending on the vibe, depending whether it's like Afro house or Boogaloo blues or salsa or old school, it just depends, or hip hop. Um, I feel like setting the mood is important, but also setting the intention of allowing yourself to receive, but also to be open to what's about to happen. And so for me, it's setting that space. And I'll do like Palo Santo and just sort of like sage the space, just to be thankful for the environment that I'm about to create in, but also just still consciously thinking about what's happening in the world, so it's sort of like allowing that to happen. I love to dance. Sometimes, like, the spirit moves me. I love being in conversation with my ancestors, those who are no longer here, and just sort of like say playing a song, or a song may pop up that I know that we would dance to or that they would enjoy. So just that movement, I think it's definitely allowing for movement and allowing to be free. I think it's a place where you can be the most vulnerable, and in the sense of, right, because you're in conversation with your art, but you're also, in conversation with whatever the spirits, or, all that stuff. So usually that's usually my practice. I try to like have clean energy when I'm creating, and then just allow myself to go and, just let things be.
I love it. It's almost like you have to prime your
Yeah.
brain and prepare for what is to come.
Yeah.
How do intuition and discipline dance together in this process for you?
Discipline is super important. It wasn't something that I feel like I've always had. Well, no, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, no. You have to make space, right? Like usually now, because I work full time too. I'm a full time educator. I work full time, and so I would love to be able to spend every day in the studio, but I know that that can't happen. And so for me, even if I'm like, okay, Erica, you would love to do 6 hours in the studio, but you don't have 6 hours in that day. So maybe it's 2 hours or hour in the evening that maybe you're reading. Maybe you have some ideas and you just need to look up, or you need a sketch. Or maybe you spend that hour kind of priming, like starting the first layer and knowing it's going to take a few days to complete, because you don't have the same amount of time. So for me, I try to dedicate at least one full day. Usually it's my Saturdays that I'm like, no, this is my time. This is my time to give to the art the same way as it gives to me. The same way as I nurture relationships, friendships, partnerships, family, whatever it may be. I try to have that same mindset with my art. And so even just every little bit, I think goes far. And even those days where I'm like, and I'm sure when you have those days, you go into the studio and you're like, what the noise is, or sometimes you're just tired. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you're just tired, and sometimes I'll like not force it, but be like, no, just start. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. And sometimes I'm like, oh my god, this is shit. But it's great. It's great shit, because it's the shit I needed to do. In that sense. But yeah, I feel like even if it's times where I'm like, oh, I wanted to work, say, on a painting. All right, Erica, maybe just sit with it. Maybe just write instead. It's still putting in time into the work. And it's important. It's needed. It's important. I feel like that's how you learn from the work. That's how you grow. And yeah, it's just something that now it's just a part of, like, all right, I need to eat, or I need to make art.
Yeah, it's this devotion and commitment to your art. I had this mentor a couple of years ago, and she said something that completely shifts the way I think, because we can hear a lot artists talking about that you want to make money by your art, but are you supporting your art before the art supports you?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that shift. You are the one who needs to support your art.
I had a professor in undergrad, kind of similar, that he says, I remember him telling, it was Tim Rollins. He was a pretty well known, like, contemporary artist at the time. And I remember him telling me, he said, you can have a room with a talented artist. Think of like whoever does photorealist, or a super talented individual who works here and there. And then you can have artists who maybe not have the same talent, but who's committed, to like in the studio doing the work. And that makes a difference. You know what I mean? Like that really makes a difference with not only the product and the production, but also how people also view the artist as well. You know what I mean? It's like a career, it's like anything else. Like, yeah, we want to yes, of course, we all want to get paid from, making our art, but you also need to make time. You have to first put into yourself, invest in yourself before, you know,
Yeah. There was
deliver.
a study that was made by, I think it was like ArtNet or something, that say that one of the most important things that the collectors wanted to see before they make a big purchase, such as an artwork, is the commitment in
Mhm.
his art practice.
Yeah. And the story. I feel like collectors also want to know not only the story behind the piece, but the story of the artist.
Your story, because your story will completely shape what you create. You only create what you create because of your life experiences.
100%.
Yeah, I love that. Looking back now, how has your art changed you? Not your career, but as a human.
Mm, great
It's a
question.
deep question.
How has my art changed me? Well, I feel like how has my art changed me? So my brain is going through two. So one, I think about the materials, right? And the impact of the materials in the sense of, the reason why I use spray paint. One, I mean, I grew up in the 80s in the South Bronx. I grew up around like seeing all these murals, but thinking about who were creating these murals were brown and black kids from the Bronx who didn't have access, who weren't welcome in these spaces, galleries, museums, right? They were looked on, like, it wasn't seen as art. And now, right, you have a graffiti museum, you have all these things, and people want that, right? Because now,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's whether it's trending or whether like people can appreciate it. And so when I think about growth or change, right, that's a medium that I use that has shifted, right, and how we use it. We never thought about putting spray paint on a paper and framing it. That wasn't, it was on a wall, it was, graffiti, it was whatever. But it was young people using this medium to express themselves, right? To claim their space, to educate, I
Mm.
think, others. And so, in that sense, being aware of that, I think that's changed me too, and how I use the media and why I include it in my work. Um, and I would say, even because sometimes I photograph the people that I'm documenting, being in conversation with them is a part of, because of depending on the conversations that we're having about family, or whatever it may be, I feel like that also changes and impacts how I go about the work.
If you could leave one message for creatives who are in that between phase, they're creating, they're trusting, they're making time for their art, but they're still waiting for clarity. What would you want them to remember?
I say it all starts with just love, right?
Mm.
I say you got to love yourself. You have to, because I think love nurtures everything that happens after. I think when you really love yourself, you then trust, and that's where the confidence comes in, right? But you really, for me, it's like, do it for you. Do it because it brings you joy. Do it because, not because like, oh, I want to, I'm doing this so that it can go in the museum, or I'm doing this so I can make more money. The money and everything comes, but you have to love yourself, and that will come out in the work, and it'll be received. So that, yeah, I say love the work, love yourself, do it for
Yeah.
you, because everything else will come together.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that we say when we talk about self love, it is also acceptancy. It's the
Yes.
way that you accept everything that you went through. We all went through some stuff that maybe we're not that proud of, but you have to accept that we are just being human. And
Yeah.
human makes mistakes, but I am a truly believer that even the hardships are meant to be lived. That way you can gain that confidence and shift to a completely new reality.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. There's a series that I did early on, like when I started to really invest in myself. And I started to just look at old photographs of my father who was incarcerated like in the 80s. And it's called He's More Than a Drug Dealer. Right. So I took these images, I did like little illustrations, and some of them are bigger than others. Some of them are him as a little boy, and then some of them are like family portraits that we took visiting him in prison. And the reason why I was playing with the title, He's More Than a Drug Dealer, because he is more than that, right?
Mm.
Like, yes, he committed whatever, but he still is a loving father. He's a community activist, he's a member, he's given back and seeing people for who they are beyond like the the challenges of life, because we're all human, right? We're all trying to figure things out. uh
Yeah.
and I think, like, for me, that's where art, I don't know what, I guess this is why I do what I do, is because to celebrate, right, those moments, because there's already a lot of hardship. There's already people want to put biases and project and put you in a category, but we're more than that. um
What is the meaning behind your art?
the meaning behind my art.
Or we could say, what is the intention that you want people to perceive your art as?
Human connection. Yeah, celebrating the stories, the unseen stories, those stories that history has in some ways, try to put under the rug. Celebrating the everyday person, right? Celebrating, folks in the community, the queer folks, the Latin vibe. And yeah, I would say that we're all connected in some way, that they can see themselves, see somebody that they care about reflected in these portraits. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think your work is very powerful. Please check it out, Erica's work. I will definitely put her information in the show notes. Erica, we're just starting 2026.
Yeah.
Would love for you to share a little bit, if you can, or as much as you want to share about what is emerging next for you.
Right now, I'm taking time to sort of sit with like, because sometimes I think as an artist we want to just produce, produce, and I think it's important to sit with not only the work but also sort of be able to document and log in the process or what may come up. So, not trying to rush things just because, right? I know that there's deadlines sometimes, but I think like sometimes it's sort of like allowing yourself to learn and take a step back. And so for me, um, to continue to be in group shows, to be in a solo show, like, right, that's definitely a goal. And that I continue to travel to be inspired for the work, to continue to produce the work.
I love that. So you've been on the few art fairs. They're very popular here in the United States. Is there any tip that you'd like to share if any other artists listening wants to follow that path as well?
I would say network, right? Go to openings if you can. If you have friends who are inspired to curate shows, be a part of that. I think exposure is important, and you never know, right? I think that that's the thing. It's sort of like, and you can do all these things and you feel like nothing's happening, but it is,
It
because
is.
even when you apply to a residency and you get rejected, or you apply to a grant, whatever it may be, that's a group of jurors who's seeing your work, right? And maybe for the first time. And there's a lot of talent out there, right? There's a lot of creative people. There's so much talent out there. And I'm sure it can be overwhelming, right? If you only have 5 slots and 100 people submit work. So I don't think it always means that you're not worthy of to be in that place. It could be timing, it could be depending on what the jurors are looking for. Maybe they're looking for like more abstract and not portraiture abstract, right? So I think that, continue even if you get rejected, like continue to put yourself out there because yeah, it's just exposure and network.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep it up. And I read something on Instagram this morning that stuck with me and I want to share because it really matches what we are talking about, which is as long as you don't take anything personally, you don't have any problems.
And so that's great actually, yeah.
Isn't that true? Just don't take anything personally and then all your problems will disappear.
True, it's true, the noise, because we get in our heads and it's like the world is already heavy and there's already plenty of bullies out there. You don't need to bully yourself,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that goes with connecting to like self-love and self-care. And like, yeah, put the noise aside. Put the noise aside. So,
And comparison too. I think comparison, it's so cliche, like comparison is the thief of joy. But if you look into this sentence, it goes so deep
mhm,
because a lot of times we are comparing ourselves to other people and unconscious
yeah.
when you see something and then if we use that feedback to inspire you because when you start comparing yourself, it is definitely a hidden place in you that you haven't used yet. It's
Yeah.
almost like a waste of talent. So
Yeah.
if you see it that way, you catapult yourself and
Mhm.
turned that comparison into inspiration to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't compare. Yeah.
Erica, thank you so much for being part of Decoding the Flow. Please share where people can find you and connect with you.
So on Instagram, you can connect Erica Morales dot studios. I would say that that's probably the best place to connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erica. Happy 2026. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and we'll talk very soon.